Eric. I'm one of the pastors here, and I just want to make this declaration as we begin today that I hate laundry. I hate doing laundry. I hate everything about laundry. Anyone with me? Perfect place for imperfect. Okay, I'm in good company. Let me be even more specific. It's not that I hate laundry. I know hate is such a serious word, but I do hate a portion of laundry. It's not so much doing it. That's easy. It's folding the clothes and then putting the clothes where they belong. Like I've been folding my laundry since I was 13 years old, and I feel like I need to graduate on to greater things. I don't have time to do that. I need to be living out greatness in my life. Why would I fold and put away the laundry now? That's beneath me. Amen? Some of you didn't say amen to that. I can see in your faces you're saying, look at this millennial over here. Really? Like, it's called being a responsible person. It's called helping in your house. It's called doing chores. And I get it. That's my point. But the thing is, no one wants to do chores, right? But there's a benefit in working and helping in your house. You become not only a contributing member of your household, but if you've been folding your laundry and mowing your lawn and cooking your food like I have since 13, I've matured because of it. I am better today because of my dad making me do things when I was younger. I've matured. And I wish I was making this up, but I have friends who are my age. I'm 38. I have friends who are my age that today they don't know how to do their laundry. Because someone always served them growing up. Forget serving other people. They don't even know how to help themselves. And unfortunately, I think it's because of the culture that we surround ourselves with. What we watch on TV and what we hear and what celebrities show us is that serving leads to insignificance. Serving doesn't lead to greatness. Serving leads to insignificance. And so today, I want to set the record straight. I want to show us what Jesus said about serving and greatness. If you're taking notes today, I encourage you to open up your app. If you don't have the app, you can search the local church on various app stores. If you have the app, it should have updated already. It's new, it's robust. We just released it, re-released it last week. But I want to say this, it's going to take some work for you to grow. The reason I keep on pushing the app is it's the easiest way for you to follow along with what God is doing here, to keep up to date with what God is building in this place. But our notes are not like the old notes where you could just press it and it would fill in the blank for you. If you want to grow, you have to pay attention. And so the first big idea that you're going to have to pay attention to if you want to grow is this. And you can write this down in your app or in your notes. The key to maturing into the person God wants you to be is by serving people. The key to maturing is serving. Last week we started a series called You Happen Here, and we took a look at Mark chapter 2, where Jesus is teaching, where Matthew chapter 4 says in Capernaum it was his home that he had created, and he's teaching, and much like we're experiencing in this season as a church, there is no more room in this home. And so we're going to continue to talk about this throughout this series, but really what this entire series is about is us doing something. Is us being a part of what God is doing here, and we're doing that by talking about our values as a community of Jesus. All of us, we should have things that we value. What do you value? If you don't know what you value, I'll tell you what you value. Look at your pay stub. Look at your checking account. Look at your credit card statements. What you value is what you spend your money on. What you value is what you spend your attention on and your focus on and your time on. Some of you are saying, well, no. I don't, those aren't the things that I value in this life. Those are the things that I have to do for me to live. But the reality is, if you're not living out what you value, you're not living. You're simply existing. And so we have to know what we value. If we don't know our why, then we'll lose the where we're going. If we don't know why we do things, we'll lose the way in which we do them. So our values are not simply definitions of what we do, but they mean who we are. And so today, as we talk about our values, I want to talk about the second thing we value as a church familia, and it's help. Help happens here. Say that after me. Say, help happens here. I said after me, you guys. You guys are proactive. Let's say that again after me. Help happens here. Now your turn. Help happens here. Good job. Good job. Here's what I mean by that statement. The way I serve God is by serving other people. The way that I serve God is by serving people. And let me unpack what I mean by that. See, I believe a lot of us in this place would agree that people who serve God are great, right? We look at the heroes in the Bible, these people who gave their life and their time, their treasure and their talent. We look at people in our world today. Most of us would agree that people who serve God are great, yes? But how we serve God is by serving other people. And many of us would agree that serving people doesn't sound great, does it? It doesn't sound like something someone who is great would do. It sounds less than. It sounds lowly. It sounds something like a loser has to do. Serving people doesn't lead to significance. That's what we believe. We all want to be great. And we think that serving people doesn't lead to greatness. Anyone here want to be great? Let me see by show of hands. Let's be honest. You're not being honest. You're lying. Every single hand in here should go up. Every single human being wants to be great. No little kid dreams one day, as they're growing up, when I grow up, I want to be mediocre. I want to be average. Okay, I just want to get by. No, we dream of being special. We dream of being super. We dream, all of us, whether or not we want to admit it, we all want to be winners. And can I tell you, that's not the problem. We all have this desire inside of us to be great. Why? Because God created us. We are created by the greatest who ever lived, the greatest of all time, the greatest being in his image. And God has wired us deep inside to do great things for him. Being great and the desire to want to be great is not the problem. The problem is this, that a lot of us, we don't know the pathway to greatness. We don't know what it means to actually be great. And so today I want to continue to teach in the book of Mark, but we're going to move from chapter 2 to chapter 9. What we need to understand, the context of this is after what we talked about last week, where Jesus was in the home that he built, and people came and they crowded, and these 4 guys busted a hole through his roof to let down a paralyzed guy that Jesus healed. Jesus and his disciples, they went around and they began to tour other cities, showing the grace and the love and the healing miracle power of God. And then in chapter 9, where we're going to read today, they come back to Capernaum. They come back to where Matthew chapter 4 again says that Jesus made his home. And it says this in Mark chapter 9, verse 33. It says, Jesus and his disciples came to Capernaum. And when Jesus was in the house, say house, we'll get to that in a moment. When Jesus and them came to the house, he asked his disciples, hey, what were you arguing about on the road? When we were walking, when we were doing our road trip, what were you guys talking about? And it says the disciples kept quiet. Why? Because they argued about who was the greatest. Jesus is on a road trip, and his disciples start having this argument. Which one of us is the best? Which one of us is the greatest? Has anyone here ever been on a road trip before? Yeah? Raise your hand if you've been on a road trip with children. You're laughing, right? Because it's like hell on earth, isn't it? It's torture. You want to go nuts? Take your kids somewhere very, very far away. Because 100% of the time on a road trip with little children, this question is going to pop up. And you already know the question. For some of you, it's the bane of your existence. If you know the question, you just say it with me. The question is, are we there yet, Dad? How much longer, Mom? Are we there yet? Have we arrived at Disney World? Did we arrive in DC? How much longer is it going to be? This is the same question that the disciples were asking. Are we there yet? Have we arrived? And this is important for us today because a lot of us, we want to get to the destination, but we don't want to take the trip to get there. Many of us, we want to get to the place of promise that God has for us, the place where we can fulfill our purpose and our destiny, but we don't want to go through the process of getting there. Are we there yet? This is what the disciples are asking. Have we arrived? Which one of us has gotten there already? Which one of us is the greatest? I want you to think about that for a second, okay? Let's go back in time. That's a stupid question to ask, right? Why? Because they're on the road and they're arguing about who's the greatest, and they are with the greatest. They were in the house when Jesus healed that paralyzed man. They saw all these miracles as they traveled from town to town. And a lot of scholars believe that this house that we said, this house that they're back in at Capernaum, may be the house that Jesus stayed at. Maybe the house where the paralyzed man came through the roof. And so now they're in the house and they see the hole and they remember the miracles. And by the way, this was after, in Mark chapter 9, this is immediately after Jesus had to cast out a demon in a little boy that the disciples could not cast out. And they're asking, which one of us is the greatest? You're in the presence of the greatest. You're in the presence of God himself. Have we arrived? That's what they want to know. And so Jesus, when he gets to the house, he already knows what they were talking about. He asked the question, what were you talking about? But Jesus already knows what's in their hearts. And that's important for some of us today. See, you're here. You've arrived in the house of God. And he already knows what's in your heart. Stop hiding it. The sooner we can be honest with what's going on in our hearts and our minds, the sooner God can take us to the place he wants to get us to. For some of you today, you just got to be honest with him. He knows. God, I'm here and I'm angry. I'm confused. God, I'm here and I'm doubting. The sooner we can be honest with him, the sooner he can transform us and take us to where he wants us to go. And so the disciples don't answer, but Jesus knows what's in their heart, so he sits them down. And verse 35 says, Jesus called the 12 and said, listen, I know what you guys were talking about. You wanted to be the greatest. But anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all. Again, notice Jesus doesn't criticize them for wanting to be great. He doesn't say, oh, you guys were talking about who's the greatest. That's a dumb thing to talk about. No, but what does he do? He defines what greatness is. He shows them the path to greatness. This is what we need to understand. Because in the culture, in the world we live in, it's redefined and it's reduced what greatness actually is. A lot of us, we believe this lie about being great, and we think to be great means to be known. To be great means to be better than other people around me. To be great means that everyone loves you and you've accomplished so much. But that's not the way of greatness that Jesus defines. To be great means that I'm known and people notice me. And we live with this false definition of greatness, and that's why so many of us, when we post something on Instagram, we're constantly checking how many people liked it, how many people shared my status on Facebook, how many people watched my stories, and we begin to compare our greatness with somebody else's greatness. And people aren't the standard, God is, but now we're living for other people's attention, and we're defining who we are based off of their greatness, and that's the spirit of religion, not the heart of Jesus. See, religion, it always bases spirituality with scales. And the more that I put on my side of the scale, the more that I do, and the more that I'm noticed, and the more that I'm loved, and did I do more than you, and did I give more than you, and did I worship louder than you, and did I get some stage time, and if the scales tip in my favor, that means I'm greater than you. But can we just be honest? That's exhausting, isn't it? And it's a futile way of thinking that leads to frustration and failure, because the reality is you might be able to please some people some of the time, but there's no way you can please everybody all of the time. And so it's just futile. And we'll never find peace comparing ourselves to other people's greatness around us. If you're struggling with that, here's what you need to know. There's only one person whose opinion matters of you. There's only one person whose opinions of you hold eternal significance, and his name is Jesus, and he already loves you. You. As you are right now. He loves you. And he loves you so much that he was willingly placed himself on a cross and was brutally punished and murdered, paying the penalty of sin that we should have paid. He took all of our sin, all of our shame, all of our wrongdoing upon himself, and he resurrected from the grave. And now, because the foot of the cross, because of what Jesus did at the cross, all of us, we are on level playing ground. So we don't have to compare ourselves to other people. And if we were willing, God could make us the best version of ourselves. God could transform us into who he's created us to be. We could be great. But we need to understand what greatness really looks like. Jesus didn't condemn them, criticize them for wanting to be great. What Jesus did was he redefined, or more accurately, he accurately defined what greatness is. In Mark 9:35, this is what he says. He says, anyone who wants to be first, anyone here want to be first again? Let's be honest. I want to be a winner. Come on, liars, seriously. It's a perfect place for imperfect people, but be honest. Do you want to be great? We don't go to a restaurant and say, hey, I'd like the most average, mediocre thing you have on the menu. No, I want the best thing, right? We all want to be great. If you want to be great, make some noise in this place. Jesus says, if you want to be great, if you want to be first, you must be what? The very last. And then he gives us another one. You got to be the very last, and you need to be the servant of all. Of who? All? All. See, that's not what some of us wanted to hear. But that's what we need to know. That's what greatness is. And this isn't a one and done. Jesus, he continues to clarify this all throughout his ministry. In Matthew chapter 20, same thing. On a road trip with his disciples, and they're still arguing over who's the greatest. And so Jesus says this to them, verse 26, whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your what? So not just someone who serves, but someone who's given up their rights to do anything else, to serve everybody. And Jesus doesn't just say this. He doesn't just give us a command saying, do what I say. No, he lived it out. Verse 28, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus defines and redefines our culture's definition of greatness. Jesus flips it all upside down. He says, if you want to be first, you have to be willing to be last. If you want to be great, you have to be a servant of all. And Jesus said, I've lived this by example. That's why I came. Not to be served, not for you to lift me up as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, not for you to put a crown on my head, but for me to serve you. And I served you by giving my life. And that's why he's the greatest of all time. And that's why Jesus is the GOAT. So what does that mean for us? Are you saying that all of us need to give our lives for someone else? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. But all of us want to be great. And I want to give every single one of us an opportunity to be great today. But greatness comes by serving people. And so in this church, there are plenty of opportunities for you to serve people, for you to be great. But if we're honest, we still don't think that that's the wise thing to do. We still don't like the idea of that. And so I want to be honest with you, all right? Since you're not going to be honest and raise your hand when you say, I'm not sure if you want to be great. Let me be honest with you, and let me tell you how it is in the context of not just the local church, but every church. We have these levels of greatness that we've made in our head that's a lie from Satan, and I just want to break them today. See, a lot of us, we think if there's a scale of greatness, the very top, the first, the greatest is me. Like literally Eric Gamero, me. Like you think in the church that the pastor, he must be the greatest. You know, we all sit in one direction and stare at him, and we take notes based on what he said for a half hour, and there's videos of him on social media, and we quote him, and he's literally at a whole different position. He's at an elevated position. He's on stage, we're on the ground. He must be the greatest. Do you believe that? You believe that? Listen, it's my job to deflect that, but I know you believe that. That's the reality of it. People think that pastors are the greatest, and who's great after them? Well, maybe it's the worship team. Why? Because they're literally on a platform as well, and the lights are on them, and they can sing really good, and they all get microphones. You guys don't get microphones, so the worship team, they must be next in the line of greatness. And then after that, who do we think is great? Well, probably the next generation workers, right? The children in Kids Street and all the volunteers in our Fuse high school and middle school ministry. Why? Because they're pouring into the next generation. They're investing and they're loving our teenagers and our children. And more practically, I know my children and I know a lot of your children. I know they're little spawns of Satan. And for people to love them, for our Kids Street workers to love your children, we'd say, that's pretty great, amen? I can just leave my kids with these people for an hour, and they love them. They must be great. And then who's next? Maybe it's the people who are the service host. You know, they get to wear a lanyard, and they get to be in the AC. You have to be great to be in the AC. And then after that, maybe it's the security team. They have walkie-talkies and earpieces, and they have been given authority to make sure this place is safe and secure for people. And so they must be great. And then after that, maybe it's the storytellers. I mean, they walk around with a camera in their hand. They have special access, and they have forms that you have to fill out. You know, can we use your picture? Can we tell your story? Great. But then we start getting towards the bottom of greatness. And we have all these people that are behind the scenes. And how great must they be if we don't even see their faces, if we don't know who they are? So all the people who work behind the scenes, they're not as great. And then we go even further down, and who's worse than them? The parking team, right? I mean, you can't be great if you're out there in the hot sun. These people, they help direct Florida drivers in the Florida weather. Who does that? People who aren't great, like just throw, you have no skills, you go out there. That's what we think, right? And this may offend some people, but I'm just going to be honest, because this is not what I think. This is what you think. On the very bottom of the greatness scale is a facilities team. Those who literally clean up after us. Like, who would do that? For you to take out trash, for you to reset chairs, for you to be the last one here, you're not very important. You're not great. That's beneath us. That's worse than folding laundry. And if you believe that, you've missed the point. If you really believe that, you've missed what it means to be great. If serving is beneath you, then greatness is beyond you. If you think that these areas of service are beneath you, that you're too great for them, then real greatness is beyond you. See, Jesus flipped the definition. Jesus said those who are first, we're actually last. And those who we think are last, they're actually leading the way. They're actually in the front. If you think our facilities team and our parking team are less than the preachers, you're mistaken. In fact, the very first preachers you see are the very first people you see when you step on property. They're leading the way. You see dozens of sermons before you come in here to hear the Asian guys speak the sermons. And they're not just saying it with their words, they're living it out with their lives. Our parking team, they're preaching the message in greatness every single week that you matter to God and you matter to us. How much do you matter to us? So much that we're willing to be out here in the hot Florida sun, sweating through our shirts to give you a smile and welcome you to the perfect place for imperfect people. That's how much you matter. And our facilities team, they're preaching the greatest message that we're expecting you. See, whenever guests of honor come to our house, we tidy up. And our facilities team is saying, you matter to God. We're expecting you. We love you. We want to give you so much honor. You are our guest of honor. That's why we've tidied up this place. They're living in greatness. Jesus, he flipped it all around. You'd be surprised. You would actually be stunned at the amount of people every single month that message me or come up to me and say, hey, Eric, when are you going to have me preach at your church? Hey, Eric, I got a word. Can I share a message? Why? Because you think this is great? Well, I have a gift. And my other church used me. I taught at my other church. This isn't your other church. Because here, help happens here. And until you learn how to pick up a mop and clean, you cannot pick up a mic and preach. Jesus, he flipped it upside down. So the last, what you think is the last, they're leading. They are leading the way to greatness. That's what greatness is. And even though I've said all that, some of you still don't like it. Some of you are skeptics. I get it. You're welcome here. You can continue to come here. But I know how some of us think. We're thinking, that was a really interesting and inspiring way for you to manipulate us to work for free. Come on, I know some of you are thinking that. Pastor, why don't you just be honest and say you're trying to use us? Okay, I'm trying to use you for Jesus. Because isn't that what you prayed for? God, use me. Use my life. I'll do whatever. And now you're mad because we're trying to use you for Jesus. Yeah, but it's different because I want to serve God. But how we serve God that we cannot see is by serving his people that we can see. That's the way to greatness. That's the pathway to greatness. And this isn't a one and done. This isn't just cherry picking some verse so that all of us could be a part of what God is doing here. Jesus communicated this same message all throughout his ministry. Right before he passed away, he met with his disciples and he led by example by cleaning their feet and saying, as I've served you, you serve other people. But right before that, in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus gathers his friends, his disciples together, and he begins to tell them what's going to happen in the end times. In verse 32, it says, all the nations will be gathered in God's presence, and God will separate the people as a shepherd separates his sheep, those who follow, those who know the voice of their father, and the goats, those who think they're the greatest of all time, but not. And he will place his sheep at his right hand and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to the sheep on the right, come to me, you who are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you fed me. And I was thirsty, you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick. You cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. Then the righteous ones, the sheep, will say, well, when did we do that? When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty or give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. The words of God. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, when you gave a backpack so a child could be prepared for a new school year. When you cleaned up a school that doesn't have a lot of financial support so the children can be proud of where they're growing and maturing. When you drop a few dollars in to change for a dollar to help a single mother. When you give away your smile and point people to prayer as you serve at church. When you hand someone an invite and say, hey, I'll save you a seat. You're doing it for me, Jesus said. Listen, you want to be great? I know you want to be great. Serve God. And how we serve God is by serving people. Some of you, so many of you in this place, you give of your time and your talent and your treasure so generously to make room for more people, to help make this the perfect place for imperfect people. And we can't do this without you. In fact, I want to celebrate. I want to honor you. Listen, if you serve on any team, can you stand to your feet right now while the rest of us celebrate you? Don't be humble. Listen, we love you. Thank you. Look across this room. No, stay up, stay up. You guys are so humble. Thank you, guys. We couldn't do without you, Church Familia. Our children couldn't be who they are. The next generation couldn't be what it is. We couldn't be where we are today if you did not serve so sacrificially. Thank you. And I love the humility. They're looking down. They're clapping too because they don't want the attention. You're great. You're great. You're living the greatness that God has put in you. And for the rest of us, I know you want to be great. I want to be great. If I'm honest, I want to be the greatest in the kingdom of God. But the pathway is still the same. We have to serve.